showing you how to make these beautiful woven bracelets. This is the one that we're mostly going to be doing today. So it's a lovely bracelet that I've woven very simply from materials that you find around the home. So to get going, we're going to start with something very simple that you can find in your home. I'm very interested in encouraging people to think about what they've got already in the home rather than going out and buying specialist equipment. But if you've already got a weaving loom, then I hope that this will help you as well to get on with your project. So this is a chopping board that I had and it broke. It's got like a split down there and we didn't think it was really healthy to use for food stuff. So we're going to use this today as our weaving loom. And to set it up, I'm just going to use some drawing pins. So I've got here 8 drawing pins. And first of all, we need to know the size of our wrist in order for us to set our loom up. So I'm just using a tape measure just to measure around my wrist. I've got quite a narrow wrist, but I like to have a little bit of a gap when I've got a bracelet on. I don't like them too tight because I find it irritating. So you can see there, that comes to about 20 centimeters or 8 inches. That's how wide or how big I want my weaving to be. And I'm going to start by putting 4 of these pins at the top of my board. You can just push those down with your finger in a nice straight line. Got a little bit of a bent pin there. And just for a little bit of extra security, I'm just going to give a little bit of a bash with a mallet. If you haven't got a mallet, you could perhaps go outside and get a stone or a rock or something. And then what I'm going to do is measure that 20 centimeters that I've just measured around my wrist, and that gives me the full width of length of my finished woven item. So I'm going to put 4 more of those drawing pins in at the bottom end. Push those in a straight row. Give them a little tap as well. There we go. So they're nice and firmly in place. So what I'm going to do next is start setting up my little weaving loom, and I'm going to do what's called put the warp threads on. And for this I'm using just some really strong yarn. This is cotton yarn, or if you've got string at home you could use string. Check before you put it on, give it a tug, and if it snaps then it's not going to be good. You want something that's fairly robust because we're going to be putting quite a lot of pressure on these warp threads when we do the weaving. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push through there and just tie that around that first bottom left drawing pin and tie a knot. And I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail end as well. Just push that up a little bit. Can you see there? There's a tail end to that. So I've tied that to that bottom left hand drawing pin. And now I'm going to go all the way up to the top. I'm going to do this really slowly. And I'm going to wrap it round that first top left drawing pin there. I'm just going to have to move them apart a little bit. So I've just gone from here all the way up, all the way down, and all the way round. And I'm going back down. And between that first and second one, and I'm going to wrap it around the second one this time, and then go all the way back up to the top and wrap it around the second one along. All the way back down again. Back up to the third one. And then the last one. And then finally up to the top right hand corner one. And I'm going to leave a very long thread, tail of thread. And what I'm going to do, can you see here I've made like the shape of a number 4. I'm going to wrap that So I've gone over and I'm going to go under that last one and pull that tight to make a knot. I'll just do that one more time. So I've made like a number 4, wrap that under and pull that up so that's knotted securely in place. And what I should have here is 7 strands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And these are our warp threads on our weaving loom. So I started here and I went all the way up to the top, back down round the 2nd, back up round the 3rd, and then back up and tied it off on the 4th. I've got a nice long tail here, but what I'm going to do is use a little bit of tape and just tape that to the back so it's out the way. And the same with the top thread as well. I'm just going to wrap that over the board. A little bit of tape on that just to hold it out the way. Gets annoying if it's at the front. Okay, so there we've got now a weaving loom made just from a few bits and bobs that you can find around your home. So the next thing I'm going to do is start weaving. I'm going to start with the same thread that I used to warp my weaving loom. Just cut a little bit here. Usually between sort of 50 to 70 centimetres is enough. And I've got here a yarn needle, so it's got a very big wide eye to get nice big thick strands of yarn through. I'm going to start weaving. So when we weave, we go under and over these threads across here. Now I'm going to start about halfway along. So I've gone 1, 2, 3. I'm going to start on the 4th thread here. And I'm going to start by going under. I'm going to go under all of those and then go over and then under and over and just pull that through so that that tail end is in the middle rather than at the end, although you can see it at the end there. So I've got to the very last one here and I went under that one, so this time I'm going to go over it and under and over all the way to the end. And you'll notice that there's a bit of a gap here. So I've got here, this is a weaving comb, and you can use that. You can just use an ordinary comb, or if you haven't got a comb, a fork will do. You can get a fork out of your drawer and just use that to push down your weft threads. These are called the weft threads that go across. So on that last one there I went over, so for the next row I'm going to go opposite to what I did on the previous row. So I'm going to go under and over all the way to the end again. Pull it, and you have to be really careful not to pull it too tight, otherwise you'll find that that end thread will start going in and it will pinch in like that, almost like a waist. So you have to be really careful not to pull it too tightly. So again I went under, so I'm going to go over this time, over, under. Move that down. I'll do a couple more rows. I usually do about 4 or 5 rows to start with in the same colour, and the reason for that is, if we get the example, you can see here that the warp threads are hidden away at the end of this bracelet. If I did it in a different colour you'd see them, so it kind of makes it neater if you use the same colour to start with and to end with as well. Okay, I've done about 4 rows there, and what I want to do now is change colour. So what I'm going to do this time is go halfway, so I'm going to go under, over, and then I'm going to stop there and just push the needle all the way to the end and pull it out. Move that down, get my scissors and just snip that off. I've got lots and lots of bits here that I've chosen to weave with today. So some of it's yarn, some of it's fabric. But what I'm going to do first of all is start with a different coloured strand of yarn. You'll be able to see a bit more clearly what I'm doing. So where I finished there, so at this middle one I went over last. So for the next row I'm going to go back over that same strand there, that same warp thread, and just continue weaving under, over, under, and pull. Just pull it until that tail end is just behind, and then back again, over, under, over, under, over, under. And then this time we're going opposite to the previous row. Once you get into a rhythm with this, it's quite relaxing. I'm just going to do a row, a couple of loose rows, and hold it up to the camera so you can see how the weaving's going. Okay. So I hope you can see this okay. I'm just going to make it a little bit clearer. So what you see here is, for this row here, I've gone under, over, under, over, under. And then on the subsequent row, where I've gone under here, I'm going over here. So we're doing the opposite. Hopefully you can see that clearly. And then with my comb, I'm just pushing it all the way down. So they're nice and tightly held together. Hopefully that makes sense. And then to finish, just going to go under, over, and I'm going to stop there in the middle, push that needle under those last two so that my tail end, when I finish, is at the back rather than at the edge. Just going to snip that one off there. Okay, so for the next row I'm going to do a different colour for the next row. Where I finish just there, I'm going to go over that again with the next colour, which is what I'm going to do next. This time I'm going to weave with a little bit of fabric. This is a woven, silk woven thread. Now sometimes it can be a bit temperamental silk, but what I'm going to try and do is rip it. So I'm going to start by snipping, and then I'm going to pull it, and it should technically rip all the way down the warp thread. And we've got this lovely sort of orange, slightly, some of the fibres are coming out, but I quite like that. I quite like that messy look. And because we've got a nice big yarn needle, it'll go through there quite easily. I'm just going back to my piece again. So this is where we did the last stitch on the previous row, so I'm going to go right beneath it, beneath these warp threads here, and over that one that we went over last when we finished on that row before, and pull all the way, and then start again on the next. It's a little bit more tricky weaving with different fibres, with fabrics, thicker than your yarn. But it's because it's thicker, it grows as well, so it grows faster. You can get your weaving done fairly quick. Again, I'm being very careful not to pull it too tight. Now if you want, you can do your weaving fairly loose, so it's just so you can see the warp threads through it. Some people like to do that as a feature of their weaving, or as I prefer to do it, fairly tight, so really pushing those warp threads down. So even though that looked like it had grown, it's actually not grown that much now because I've pushed it all the way down, and I like that. I like that nice tight weave. Okay, so I'm just going to finish that one off there because we're going to try something different. So this time we're going to go for a really thick piece of yarn here. So we finished, that was the last stitch on that previous row there, so I'm going to put my needle all the way under until I get to that stitch there and go over in the same way as I did on that last stitch, and then pull this all the way through almost to the end, and then start weaving again on the next row. This grows really quickly with thick yarn. If you've got really fine yarn, what you could do is double it up, so you've got 2 strands of yarn. Now I'm going to go deliberately wrong on the next row. So what I'm going to do this time is go wrong deliberately, just so that you can see what happens. So when I go wrong, can you see the warp threads? They show up, they're more visible. Technically there's nothing wrong with doing that, only that's going to come undone. So what you need to do, it's really hard doing it left-handed, is go opposite to what you did on your previous row. So hopefully you can see that okay. There you go. So to finish off, I'm just going to go under, over, under, over, and then halfway through go all the way to the beginning, so that we've ended just there. And I'll snip that off. And this time I'm going to try something else that's a bit different. So I've got here, it's a gauze that it's been hand dyed. It looks quite tatty, but I'm going to cut a piece of that off just to show you that you can use just about anything around your home. If you have a look around your home, you might find some old bits of textile, some old things like shirts or pillowcases that you no longer need. Ribbons, you know those ribbons you get sometimes when you go and buy a new garment, they sometimes have ribbons in the shoulders. You could use those as well. There's lots of things that you can find around your home that you could use for a project like this. So where I ended there with that stitch, I'll just make sure it's nice and clear. I'm going to put my needle behind these and go over that one first where we ended, and then carry on weaving. I'm going to pull this piece through. It looks a bit tatty at the minute, but it won't. And then I'm going opposite, push that down, pull it, but being careful not to pull it too tight. You don't want these end ones to come in. I'll just get my comb, push that down. And you see how that lovely that blends in. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get much more out of that. We're just coming to the end. So I'm going to turn that around and finish it on the next row. Oops. It's got tangled around my needle, so I'm going to have to snip it off. You can see there I've just pulled a little bit too tightly on that, so I'm just going to pull that back a little bit and then squash that down. So I think you're probably getting the idea of how to weave back and forth. So here's one I made earlier. And you can see here I've gone all the way up to the top, squashing down my fibres. Just make sure it's nice and clear for you. There we go. And I'm finishing off with the same thread that I started with, and also the same thread that I use for my warp threads. This is where it gets a little bit tricky because we're right at the top now and it's really getting quite tight. So I'm just going to show you. I'm going to do a few more rows. It can be really tricky. In fact, I think I might get my comb and just move that down a little bit, just so that I can get my needle in. Hopefully you're not getting the back of my head through the camera. Oh, I've just undone that one. And I'm going to do about 3 or 4 rows just to finish off, so that we've got like an even amount to mirror what we did at the beginning. It's a good workout for the hands, this as well. So I'm trying to get as close to those pins as I possibly can. I think this will be the last row that we can squeeze in. Ooh. So to finish off, I'm just going under, I've gone, oh sorry, under, over, and then that's it. I'm going to just pull it all the way through, and I'm going to finish there. My scissors and snip that off. I'm going to leave a little bit of an end though. I don't want to have it too long, but I don't want to have it too short neither. And now this is the magic bit. You might think, oh my goodness, it's going to come undone, but it won't. So I'm going to take all of these drawing pins out now. And as if by magic, it just stays as it is. Nothing's come undone at all. So you can see at the top here, I might even bring this a bit closer to the camera again so you can see it. Hopefully that's nice and clear. Can you see we've got some loops at the top here? And that's the last one where the thread's coming out. And the same at the bottom. You won't be able to see it because we pushed all the fibres together. We squished them down as we were going along. So what I'm going to do is just push those up a little bit, and they're not going to go anywhere. They're not going to come off. You can move those fibres around, up and down the warp thread, just to get them nice and even. I'm going to go back down again so you can see it. I'm just going to spread them out just to even the fibres out a little bit, and nothing's going to come undone. Just turn it over, and I'm going to undo that tape that we put on at the beginning, just to release those fibres at the beginning and the end. Okay. So if I turn that over now, there's all those little tail ends, and they're all in the middle rather than at the end. So that's why, rather than changing thread at the beginning and the end, I did it in the middle, and that makes it easier and neater as we go on. But the first thing I'm going to do is weave in this tail end here that we had at the beginning when we first, can you remember when we tied off that first drawing pin? That was that little end that we had, and we wanted a longer piece, and the reason we wanted it a little bit longer was so we can weave in. So again, I'm going to bring it closer to the camera, threaded my needle, and what I'm going to do is thread that all the way down through those woven bits there. If I just turn over, you can't see my needle at all, but I'm going to poke it out just a little bit, about, I don't know, about half an inch to an inch away. Pull that through. And can you see the end's just popped inside? It's disappeared. I'm going to go back up again. And then just catch that there so it doesn't fall in. There we go. Go back down there again. And then I can snip that one off. What we've got here is all these fibres that are hanging down. Now, you could leave those on. You can actually make that a feature of your bracelet if you wanted to. Or, if you want to neaten it off, all you do is just go down with your scissors and snip them off. It won't come undone. The only thing I would avoid doing is digging your scissors into your work, because you might accidentally cut your warp threads, and then that would be a disaster. I'm just going to do this really quickly, then we can move on to the next bit. I'm sitting here and I can hear my parrot in the house. She's shouting really loudly because she just wants to be in here with me. So hopefully somebody will go and entertain her in a minute. So by snipping those off, you're almost making it the same on both sides. If we'd have started our weaving at the end, changing colours, sorry, at the beginning and the end, you would have had unsightly ends here. Whereas because we've done it in the middle, we've got this nice sort of curved edge. Just makes it neater. Some tutorials you'll see online, they'll tell you to change at the end, but I prefer to do it in the middle. It's really down to your own personal preference. Okay, so we've got a couple more tail ends here. So that's the one where we finished weaving. So I'm just going to again weave that back in. There we go. And I'm going to leave this bit here because we're going to use this long piece here as for our button hole. Okay. So next, and again you don't have to do this, you can probably find different ways, and we'll show you some examples at the end, but different ways of making a fastening. But I'm just going to stitch a button onto this. So I've got this nice square button that I think goes quite well with this. We just stitch that into place using a pink thread here just to pick up some of the colours that are in this particular bracelet. And then the next thing I'm going to do is use this thread here to make a buttonhole. So I'm just going to thread that yarn needle and just check this for sizing by wrapping that around the button. I'm just going to hold it in position and just check that I can unfasten. Yes, I can. So I can fasten and unfasten, so I know by holding that there I can stitch that into position. I'm just going to stitch, make a loop and go through that loop. I'll flip it over. There's something you can do just to make this a little bit more robust, is like a blanket stitch. So to do that, and wrap that yarn, whoops, around that way. So I'm going under the buttonhole loop, and then I'm wrapping the working yarn around the back and pulling through. So under the loop, wrap that around, pull it through, and you keep going around until you've completed all the stitches. I won't carry on, but what I'll do is I'll show you the other one that's completed. Let's just bring that a bit closer for you to see. So you can see here, in fact it was that way around, I did the blanket stitch all the way around, and it's made it much neater and more robust so that I can fasten that on and have more security. So that's how you do the buttonhole. And then finally, just down to embellishment. So I've done, on this one, I've done some embroidery in the middle here. So I've done that to bring out sort of that pink shape there. So I've got some thick embroidery thread or floss. So you can stitch or embellish your bracelet. And you don't need to even be, you know, an embroiderer. It's quite easy to do these stitches. Just done a little cross sort of shape there. That's getting in the way. Move that out of the way. And then finally, the other thing you can do is just decorate with some trinkets that you've got collected or have around the home. So I've got a jar that I push things in, pick things up and put them in. Got lots of things in here, little trinkets, or you could use a button if you wanted. I've got a button here. Perhaps put that on your design, on your bracelet. Some cogs. Oh, I've just found something here with party on. There's lots of possibilities of things that you could embellish your bracelet with. You can see I've done that earlier as well. Found that lovely elephant charm there. On this one, for example, I've used an old tablecloth that had some embroidery on, so I've stitched that around onto the bracelet, and I've also done some embroidery, red embroidery in a contrasting thread just to bring it out. And then on the back I've used again another old tablecloth and made some backing, so you could back your bracelet as well. It was my daughter's birthday last week, so I made a, she's has been actively involved in the Youth Strike for Climate, so I made a bracelet with the suffragette colours and the words of her favourite song I've stitched onto it. So I used a stamper and then stitched that on, and I've put a button here on both sides so she can wear it either that way on the plain side, or again she can turn it around and have the words visible. For this one I actually used 3 drawing pins instead of 4, so it's much narrower, so you can make a narrow bracelet as well. So lots of possibilities of things that you could do with your bracelet, and different sort of ways of making it as well. So I hope that's been a nice session for you.